The origins of the Elder Scrolls universe are a huge collection of folklore, guesswork, and myths. There are nearly no books that document the origins of the worlds and reality as we know it. But as with all stories, there are the common threads that run through each, and it is in these threads we will find the truth. This series aims to document the creation tales and stories of each culture from Tamriel, and draws inspiration from material only presented within the canonical games. This time, we shall tell the oldest of the tales of creation, the story that came with the Aldmeris when they sailed north from Aldmeris. In the beginning, in the time before time, two beings manifested within the coldness of nothing. These were Anu, rigid order, and Padme, chaotic change. These beings existed more akin to forces than as living creatures. So, to experience creation and to know themselves better, they gave birth to their own souls. From Anu came Anuiel, the everlasting, ineffable light. And from Padme came Sithis, corrupting, inexpressible action. Sithis is thought by many to have been created by Anuiel, to represent the limitations of the primordial deities. Others believe that Sithis does indeed come from Padme, but Sithis' story is for another time. With Anuiel and Sithis, the interaction between light and action formed Aurbis, the arena. In this nebula of primordial soup, beings began to crystallize and form. First among these was Auriel, and with Auriel came time. Created or formed in tandem with Auriel came Lorcan, the doom drum. As time seeped from Auriel, other beings condensed. Thoughts, emotions, beliefs, forces, and realities became creatures that we know were the Etarda. The Etarda grew, learned of what they were, and spread throughout the realm of Aurbis. It is said that the doom drum listened to the whispers of its parent, that Sithis grew bored of the stagnancy and unfailing perfection of Aurbis, and with malicious intent did Lorcan convene with the Etarda. Lorcan told them all that they would be able to create something better, a place they could explore, they could love, and have subjects to rule over. Many of the Etarda jumped at this opportunity, and it is said an Etarda of great architectural skill was put in charge of the project after the Etarda had agreed to its creation. Some of the Etarda, especially those that had formed close to the void of Padme, saw this to be a fool's errand, and that they would create their own realm, separate to this new one. These Etarda formed Oblivion and became the Daedra. They have no connection to creation, and must imitate, where those Etarda who partook in creation, now known as the Aedra, may create and form freely. The Aedra formed Nirn, imparting their power, their skill, and some their forms to create the world. But as this happened, as Magnus read its blueprints, there was a terrible revelation. The Etarda were doomed to unbind themselves from the heavens of creation. By imparting their divinity and their power unto the creation of the world, they would sever their ties with Anuiel and Sithis. They would be doomed to become less than what they were. Many of the Aedra, upon realizing this, fled with Magnus from the world they had created. They tore at the veil between worlds, ripping it with small holes. The greatest of these holes were formed by Magnus, who had invested much in the project. Where Magnus fled from the world, the sun now sits high above us. The Magna Gi, as these Aedra would come to call themselves, would never return to Aurbis, and reside now in the realm of Aetherius. These stars and the sun are portals to Aetherius, and this is where magic flows from. There were those Aedra who looked upon the sparks of creation, and decided that it was too late to give up on the project. These Aedra, who had already invested much of themselves, bound themselves eternally to Nirn, becoming the planets that we see around us in the night sky. These Aedra, 8 in total, with Auriel as their patron, watched as those that could not or would not flee, or were unable to bind themselves to the principality of Nirn, were unmade. They fell to Nirn, scattering and now existing as the Elnafey. The gods of the modern Aldmeris pantheon represent those Aedra that bound themselves to Nirn. Auriel is the chief deity of this pantheon, and is considered the ancestor spirit of the Altmer, and is the principality of time. Mara, the goddess of love, is his consort and his wife. Xerxes, the god of ancestry and secret knowledge, was the scribe and lawkeeper. Sirabane, the god of magic, was his court wizard, and was once the apprentice of Magnus, who too is considered a god of sorcery and all things magic. Stendar, the god of righteous might and merciful forbearance, was the protector of Auriel's realms. Yefri, the god of the forests, often called the spirit of Now, was the keeper of Auriel's realms. Trinamac, the god of might, was Auriel's warrior and right hand. And finally, Lorcan, the doom drum, the trickster god. Nirn was in chaos. The presence of the Aedra, so bound to be outside of time as they knew it, meant that it could not exist as we knew it today. Time flowed incorrectly, physics did not apply, magic was volatile and unstable. The land heaved and groaned without solidity. Thus did the gods meet to decide what to do with Lorcan, to make them answer for the crime of creation. They met at what is now known as the Direni Tower in High Rock, or the Adamantine Tower as it is also known as. The trial of Lorcan was a long and arduous affair. Many beings were summoned to this moot, not just the Aedra, but the Elnafey, the ancient Aldmer, and even the ancient humans. The Aedra do not converse as we do. They summon the metaphors and similes of their arguments and put them to war with one another. This event, known as the War of Manifest Metaphors, ends with the death of Lorcan. Lorcan is put to the blade by Trinamac, being ripped in twain. Lorcan's heart, the origins of their divinity, fell to Nirn. The Aedra, not knowing how to destroy such an artifact, loosed the organ from a bow across the sea. It is said many things have occurred because of this. That the Chim El Adabal of the red diamond formed in Cyrodiil from a drop of Lorcan's blood, and that the red mountain formed around Lorcan's heart. That Nirn was, to quote, impregnated with the measure of its existence and a reasonable amount of selfishness, end quote. The Aedra, soon after this, formed the convention at the Adamantine Tower, leaving it as a sign and proof of what they did to Nirn. This is said to have stabilized Nirn, allowing time, magic, physics, and the land to flow as we know it today. The gods retreated from Nirn then, and returned to their place in the heavens to watch over us. Trinamac stayed on Nirn, abandoning the realm that he came from. For he looked upon the Elnafey and grieved, who were once his kinsfolk. Trinamac protected and guided to old Elnafey, or the realm that became known as Aldmeris. These are our ancestors. The original Mer were once the Elnafey, who were once gods, and thus did the elves resent creation, for it plucked from them their very immortality, their divinity. This act, the end of the War of Metaphors, marks the end of the Dawn era. The Merethic era? The time of the elves? Well, that's just another story entirely. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. That was the story of creation, told from the traditional Altmer point of view. I'm very happy with this retelling, as it feels perhaps the most accepted one across Tamriel. It's certainly the one that crops up the most in a lot of the literature within Tamriel seems to record this being as the true events, but obviously that could be coloured by the fact that the Altmer have been around the longest and have just had time to write more books on the matter. It is of course not perfect. I have missed some things out, but I intend to do future videos about that. But we can already start to see important events reoccurring when we compare it to the annotated Annuad. I'll go over everything and what my thoughts are on the matter at the end, but at the moment I just want to show you all the stories, and then we'll start looking at the conclusions we can draw from them. Well, you know, I've rambled on long enough. If you'd be so kind as to leave a like, maybe even a cheeky subscription, or even an almighty share, that would all be really appreciated. I have a lot of plans, and they're only going to get better if I have feedback on it. As always, folks, I have been the Wandering Poro. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.